Welcome to the Livestock Podcast, sponsored by the Beef and Forage Center. I'm Bruno Pedreira, Center Director and Forage Specialist. Joining me today, Dr. Katie Mason again. Good to have you here, Dr. Mason.
I'm really excited to be here, excited for today's conversation.
Yeah, we are very, happy to have today here Dr. Andrea Ludwig, professor here in the Department of Biosystems Engineering and Soil Science at the University of Tennessee. Dr. Ludwig has also an extension and research program focusing on watershed management, stream restoration, our water quality leader here that has been helping us a lot in Tennessee. Dr. Ludwig, welcome to the Livestock Podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
To get off and started, do you want to share us a little bit? How did you get here? About your position at UT? What did bring you to Tennessee?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was originally born in Texas, so don't throw any. I'm a native Texan. Went to college at the University of Arkansas up in Fayetteville. My undergrad and my master's are from Fayetteville, and so there I studied biological and agricultural engineering. And I went into those areas thinking I came from an agricultural high school in Stuttgart, Arkansas, lots of rice production there, thinking that I wanted to, increase efficiencies and work as an ag engineer. Through my undergrad and my master's program, I just gravitated to natural resources and how some of our land uses really need to understand the natural world and how those two things go together. And then I graduated and got my PhD at Virginia Tech in Blacksburg and specialized in stormwater management. And so here, when the job came open, I've been at UT with Extension for 16 years now.
Wow.
And I know when the job posting came open for an assistant professor, Extension focused in kind of water resources, it just really spoke to me. So happy to be here. I started my career kind of working in kind of like urbanizing landscapes across Tennessee. And then that's just kind of morphed into different areas as we see, some of the challenges that water can bring to different landscapes. And so bringing that into our agricultural communities as well.
Yeah, that's great. And it's something that, we probably work with overlapping clientele maybe, but not in a way that I fully understand, all of the pieces of your job and vice versa. So just to kick us off, can you tell us a little bit about, the stream banks and riparian vegetation, kind of what that means in the context of agriculture, whether it's for livestock producers, crop producers, et cetera?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in Tennessee, we get a lot of rain.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
We feel it every day. Today it was raining. Yesterday it was raining. So lots of rain in Tennessee and all across the state. And so, that abundance of rainfall means that there's an abundance of water in our landscapes.
Mm-hmm.
And so, no landscape in Tennessee is shielded from that rainfall, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the hills.
And the hills, the topography that we have. So, it can make for some challenging combinations when we have a lot of increasing kind of downpour type storms, those extreme events. And then we've got soils and topography that sometimes don't absorb a lot of that water. So the landscapes in Tennessee could be very vulnerable to dealing with, erosion and runoff issues. There's over 60,000 miles of rivers and streams that flow across Tennessee, and those are the perennial ones, which means that they run year round. When you count even just like the storm event driven channels, over 100,000 miles of channel that water flows in Tennessee. When you add all those up, if you did it like from end to end, it would go around the earth at the equator more than twice. So that's how dense the flow networks are in Tennessee. So all that to say that, all of our Tennessee landscapes, particularly agriculture, are vulnerable to rain events and understanding how to deal with that water in the landscape in an efficient way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. And what inspired you to focus your career in watershed management, stream restoration, water resources? Where does that come from?
Oh my goodness. Well, we could go way back and get a little philosophical.
So we know that you were excited about it. I've been with on the field. I think you know stuff you like to be doing.
Oh, I love it. Field day is the bay for sure. And if I'm in a river stream, like I'm a happy place. And my wetlands are actually my favorite. So anyways, yes, lots of water landscapes. I love it. I grew up in Texas, like I said, in South Texas, but we had some property up in the hill country. So Central Texas and the Frio River. I grew up on the Frio River, and it's just a special place. Just clear, cool water, big bald cypress trees lining the rivers, cobble, rocky, caliche landscapes everywhere. It was just a really magical place to learn about nature and observe. And so again, kind of taking that respect and admiration for natural places, and then understanding how when we use our landscapes and we change the way water moves through them, not only are we, potentially creating challenges that we have to deal with, but, we also need to understand that if we can create a system that works more in harmony with our natural resources, then that's going to be the best thing for our land, for long-term sustainability, and for everything else that we share the earth with. So that's kind of my passion.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's really neat to see how it plays into, like I said, different types of agriculture systems. And, I talk about water quality for livestock producers and how they can, let's keep cattle out of ponds, let's keep them out of stream banks, but actually being able to and do some of those things maybe is a little bit more nebulous, of like, how do I fence this off, or how do I have vegetation on those stream banks? And so thinking about livestock producers, can you tell us a little bit about practical steps that they could take to keep water clean grazing systems?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the most important practices that we have are really kind of protecting that vulnerable area where the land meets the water. So those water edge areas, we'll call them riparian buffers and riparian zones. Having a lush kind of forested riparian buffer around all of our waterways is the best way to protect those systems, but then also protect the integrity of the land that's adjacent to them. So, yeah, forested buffers. And you mentioned fencing out cattle. That's a great way to reduce the impact that our cattle can have on our waterways, but also keeping them safe from some of the hazards that those water resources might present. I've seen lots of streams, especially ones that are degraded. We have a lot of erosion. Sometimes you've got like bedrock spires and just hazards that aren't really aren't great to expose your herd to. And so keeping our herd safe as well is another consideration there. And sometimes you don't even have to actually put up a physical barrier a fence, just changing the way that they move on the land and giving them alternative watering sources away from the water. And then it's allowing that riparian kind of buffer, that vegetation to establish, might be enough to keep them and kind of change the way they're moving, giving them the water they need, and then protecting the water resource and growing that vegetation to protect both at the same time.
That's a point that I think is very interesting, and it comes up when we're talking with producers, right? Sometimes you don't really need to replant those areas or bring a new covert to. If you just move the animals out, sometimes Mother Nature does
give those things a
job,
chance,
right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So nature is naturally resilient, right? If we give it enough of a chance, it can reestablish pretty easily. There's a lot, seeds move around, pieces of vegetation move around, and just nature has a way of reestablishing if we give it enough chance.
That's good. That's good. Speaking of nature, not last year, a year and a half ago now, right? Almost 2 years. It's going to be in September. We got Hurricane Helene visiting Tennessee. We didn't like this. We have been, with that flood recovering group working a lot on East Tennessee. And I know you were the one champion on that tank, helping us to recover all of these stream banks and helping us to the stabilization of the stream bank, right? What did you learn with that in the last year? How do you see that hurricane coming in? That much of flooding we have, changing the stream, and it changed the landscape overall, right? What's your take on this after a year and a half?
Yeah. As you know, there's so many observations that we've made, right? Just working with the community, looking at the landscape, trying to understand what happened, what was the response, the natural response. And then with each day, it changes. Again, nature's trying to do its thing to heal back the land itself. Humans are trying to recover what we can. And so we're affecting the way the land is responding. And then it continues to rain, of course. And so with each additional rain, there's vulnerabilities that have been left because of the amount of kind of erosion and stripping of vegetation along those riverbanks that happen in that big event. And the natural succession of the forest and it kind of coming back, that's going to take many years. And so, it's been the challenge of my career so far to help producers and landowners trying to observe, get a handle on what the issue is, because each site is different, as we've seen, right? And just trying to understand like what is going to be the best solution, and definitely not
Place.
one size fits all approach. Yeah. So we've got to have like a place-based solution. So yeah.
Yeah. And it seems like it, it's one of those things where like we have, our go-to publication for drought or for a tornado or for, these things that are like, here's the checklist, but there wasn't a checklist for this event. Right. And so I admire you all for kind of creating that checklist as you go and really learning how the system is responding. And so can you talk a little bit more about the stabilization process and what that looks like and how you've been working on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so this event was, I think, pretty unique, not only in the magnitude, but kind of how it happened. And so, as we will recall, that event came up into Tennessee. It dropped a fair bit of rain, but not as much as was actually dropped in North Carolina and Western North Carolina. And so, as we know, the Western North Carolina, the mountains there, that's really rugged, really high, steep terrain. And so that water just came into our Tennessee valleys. 30 inches in some areas, fell in Western North Carolina, and that flood pulse came into our rivers. And so one of the things that was a result is that oftentimes when I'm dealing with erosion in waterways, it's in our small stream channels, the tributaries to our big rivers. But the way that this event happened, that big flood pulse, the major damages were done on the main stem of the river. So working at this big scale on like the main stem of the Nolichucky, the main stem of the Pigeon and the French Broad, these are big river systems. And so understanding how to translate some of the skills and techniques that we use kind of in small creek bank restoration and stabilization practices, translating them in scale to a bigger river has been a learning experience. The substrates that we're working with in our projects in the Helene impacted watersheds are also kind of unique. We're used to our East Tennessee clays, a lot of us, and that red clay soil, but Helene and Western North Carolina taught us a lot of sand. And so you can see that sparkly mica in these deposition areas. And so working in sand, it's not cohesive, it's highly erodible. And on top of that, without this vegetation to help hold it in place, it is highly erodible. So those two things have been quite a bit of a challenge for me to understand, well, what is the best solution? And so we've seen some successes and also seen some where some more strategies need to be developed for higher vulnerability areas. Some of the successes that we've seen, we've been able to reuse that wood material that was produced during the event and use that in creative ways to restore soil health in those riparian areas and build the mulch berms. Yeah. So particularly in these kind of river floodplain areas, we not only have the vulnerability of the bank to the river kind of ebb and flow as storm events come, but then also that overland flow.
Yeah, and I think that's important to mention that because we also lost a lot of acres in pastures, right? That was holding that water and filtering that water in as well. Exactly. And now we don't have it. So we have kind of a runoff that's much higher than it used to be in the past. Because I've been working to try to recover those pastures as well. And then when I fail here, I feel like she fails there in the river streaming bank as well, right?
Yeah, it's all connected. It's all connected by water. So, and you're exactly right. So it's kind of a double whammy. When we lost some of the productivity of those fields, they're not capturing as much water. And so that's going overland and sometimes in concentrated areas and then creating these rills and then gullies. And then we've all learned a new word from our colleague, Dr. Forbes Walker. So a big gully, we're calling them dongas now because that's the scale we're working with. So, so we've seen a lot of success with using what would be considered like bioengineering approaches to stream bank restoration and stabilization. So really relying on these materials that we might have on hand, like wood chips, kind of organic material that's going to break down over time and increase the soil health and protect that kind of vulnerable sand surface while our vegetation is coming on. And really just trying to use things like approaches like live staking and planting bare root trees. So live staking are basically just cuttings from woody material, take them in the wintertime, jam them into saturated soil, and these special species will just propagate a whole new plant for us. And so really just trying to nudge nature towards that lush riparian forest that was there before the event. So bioengineering, relying on like those organic materials and soils and plants to provide the structure. And we're seeing in some of our kind of high flow areas, that concentrated flow areas, some of the gullies where we really probably do need to come in with a little bit more beefier of a practice and bring in some riprap, some stone, something that's more resistive to the erosive flows that come in that concentrated area.
And you have been playing also with annual plants and perennial plants and trees and and brushes.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about this and how a producer that is listening to us today can think of, because probably, especially in a normal situation, the soil is well, the soil would be better than what we have right now on the Hurricane Helene flooded affected areas, right? And probably most of the things that we would use in a regular scenario, it will not work with that amount of sand we are dealing now.
Yeah. 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 So it's important to, again, kind of like think about it in terms of how nature would heal itself. And then how can we maximize those processes to get the most stable situation possible at a quick amount of time. And so thinking about the different types of plant materials, like you were mentioning, so we use temporary cover seed as something really quickly to bring on stability, as much stability as we can, by germinating really quickly, getting roots and biomass in a season. So some summer cover, winter covers. So these like just temporary covers that establish quickly.
Yeah.
And then we also layer on top of that some of our long-term vegetation. So that's where our perennials come in, and that's hopefully going to be like the really deep-rooted grasses and flowering forbs, along with our woody species. That again will give us a nice thick root mat to help it all hold in place. So again, just like in nature, nature is a mosaic of different types of vegetation structures. A healthy riparian buffer has these different layers. So we've got something helping at the grass base layer, kind of something in the mid-story, and then those canopy trees over time.
How can we live without grass, right?
Oh, I know.
I
know.
gotta try it back. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And then, thinking about this job, and I mean, it's been a big job. And one thing that we pride ourselves on in Extension is the community aspect, right? And the volunteer aspect, and how we can pull people into these opportunities. So can you talk a little bit about the opportunities, the workshops, the volunteerism that has surrounded this project?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been really fortunate to have a lot of community partners involved with our projects. And so one of our major community partners, a nonprofit called Appalachian Resource Conservation Development, our Appalachian RCND. And they we're partnering with them along with some other nonprofits in the area to really try to create a coalition in East Tennessee about river and stream bank stabilization, because it is such a prevalent issue, not only in Helene affected watersheds, but even just land use change can really, provide scouring flows and affect those riparian areas. So we've been working with our partners. We've done about 10 different educational activities so far. We have done everything from kind of a dinner barbecue seminar series to getting them out on a stream bank, a river bank, and showing them how it's done.
Yeah,
really engaging folks. It's really been so great to be part of a community that is so invested in their river and their resources that they want to come out and volunteer and learn how to restore those areas.
And I think this is very important, because that's the kind of labor you cannot pay for, right? And you, if you can put together this kind of people that will help you, a single farmer, how long is it going to take for a single farmer to work in a stream bank like that? And if you have like 20, 30, or 40 volunteers that you can put, as you have been putting them together, it's beautiful to see. I've been in a few of these programs, and it's really interesting to see they all working together.
Yeah. Yeah. The communities that have kind of rallied around just restoring the land and the water have been really eclectic, because of course we've got our farmers and our community members, and a lot of those community members are part of like the outdoor recreation community. So they use the rivers for paddling, for fishing. And so they're very invested again in bringing the
value of the resource.
Yeah. Yep.
So Andrea, as we continue recovering, right? It's not going to be a 6-month thing. We're gonna be working in East Tennessee for the next few years. We all know that at this point. What lessons have you learned from the Hurricane Helene that can help us to better prepare for future events like this? Can we be better prepared? I think that's the question, right?
Yeah. And I think the answer has to be yes. We can always be better prepared. And so, as tragic and unfortunate of the circumstances around this event were and continue to be, I think we've all learned a lot. And that's not just landowners and folks who are working with the producer community, but then also our municipalities, our counties, our government, our local government agencies, our federal government agencies. I think there's been things to learn at all levels. And the things that speak specifically to me in terms of riparian zones have been, again, each site has been different. So you got to get out there, make observations and make them multiple times, multiple seasons. It has to be patient, with anything with kind of restoring the land and water, it's going to take a long time and we have to be in it for the long haul and being adaptive. I think just last week, I was out at a site where after 7 inches of rain in one day, we had a little bit of washout and just, understanding that that's part of it. That's what we signed up for. That's nature. And we need to come up with a plan to pivot and try something new.
Can we better monitor the river levels?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, we can.
I think that's something that we learned as we went through this process, right? If we know more about what is happening with the water level, would help us to maybe move people earlier and be prepared for the water levels. At least from the producers, that we have been talking to, with I think everybody was caught off guard, right? It was something that we probably could do better in the near future, and that's what I would say.
Yeah. And I don't know if you're serving that up for me, but we are working with a pilot community with Cott County. And so hopefully over the course of the next year and starting here in the next month or so, we're going to be out in the field putting up some new instrumentation and really seeing how we can get some better monitoring and quicker ideas of when those river changes happen.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and it's always neat to see the new technologies or new ideas that come out of, something that was a disaster, right? But we're able to take that and learn from it and grow from it. So as we start to wrap up here, are there any other, obviously this has been a big part of your work for the past, 2 years or year and a half, but are there any other ongoing projects that you're really excited about or you want to, share as far as improving water quality or watershed resilience in the state?
Yeah, absolutely. So this coming year, we'll have, again, some workshops and educational sessions in the Nolichucky River Basin, in the Pigeon River Basin, but then also in Knox County, in Blount County as well. Again, we've been doing kind of stream bank, creek bank stabilization for several years now, and just trying to get communities kind of up to speed on what some of the options for stabilization practices are. So we've got another series of workshops coming out this winter. There's also some incentive programs. There's the long-term incentive program through the Natural Resource Conservation Service, NRCS. Look up their environmental quality incentive programs for landowners that will help with restoring riparian buffers, will help with design for more engineered practices that might be needed to stabilize riverbanks. But then there's also this new opportunity for landowners and municipalities and communities, and it's out of the Tennessee Department of Agriculture. It's called the Living Waters Edge. And so this is a resource specifically for using those bioengineering approaches to stabilize vulnerable stream banks and restore that riparian forest. And that just came out this year, and they have money allocated for the next 5 years for that work.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's nice. Going towards the end of this conversation here, if you'd give Tennessee producers one piece of advice, right, about protecting the streams or improving watershed health, what would it be?
Oh, that's a big question. I guess it's as simple as, let it grow, right? So I've seen some wonderful examples of great practices along our waterways. We have a lot of producers in Tennessee just doing the best that they can to protect not only their land, but the water. And it really, riparian areas where the land meets the water is that place where we can protect their land, protect our water resource, and really maximize the benefits for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Thinking about how all those things are interconnected is always, that's the biggest part of our work, right? So thank you so much for sharing your expertise, the things that, you've been working on, and thank you to your team for helping, recover in that community and helping after Hurricane Helene.
Excellent. Thank you all for having me.
Thank you so much, Andrea, and hope you guys, like this conversation. We are glad to have here today Dr. Andrea Ludwig with the Department of Biosystems Engineers and Soil Science. Andrea, thank you so much. The Beef and Forest Center, the Livestock Podcast is sponsored by the Beef and Forest Center. We are very happy to have you here, and hope we can see you all in the next month with our next podcast. See you all.